We all know getting into shape requires consistency. But if you're like me, sometimes that's just really hard to do. There's those days where you're too lazy to gym, or those moments where you just want to eat everything in front of you. Being self-disciplined is hard. I know this all too well because over the past 9 years, I've had some really on and off results when it comes to the gym. That is, however, until of recent. For the past 2 years, I've eaten clean every day, trained 6 times a week without fail. Somehow I managed to pull myself together and be consistent and get some results. But the surprising thing is, none of this is due to self-discipline. I'm still the same person. I'll still eat a whole bag of chips and a tub of ice cream if left unsupervised. How is this so? After studying the science behind habit change, I realized we've been sold this false idea that getting into shape requires an above average level of self-discipline. But in reality, relying on self-discipline is actually a losing battle. Instead, there are far better ways to become consistent. And so today, I'll be sharing with you proven strategies on how to eat clean every day, make working out easy, and actually fall in love with the process, even if you struggle with self-discipline. One of the key reasons why we don't get consistent is because we don't understand how our brains trigger different behaviors. But we can start to understand this through a scenario we're all familiar with: snacking. So you're going about your day and you see some snacks you absolutely love. All of a sudden, there's something inside of you that creates this urge to eat it. Now, if you're dieting, you might be able to battle this feeling and say no. But sometimes these urges are just so big that we give in. To overcome this, you wouldn't be at fault to think you need to be more disciplined and resist the urge. But if you try that, in reality, you'd be trying to fight your biology, which sometimes isn't possible. See, these urges come from the part of the brain responsible for motor control, the basal ganglia. Throughout your life, your basal ganglia has been remembering behavioral patterns. It learns that the last time you saw chocolate and ate it, you felt awesome. Now, every time you see a chocolate bar, your basal ganglia triggers a release of dopamine, a neurochemical which incites craving, so that you can eat it and feel good once again. This sequence is known as the habit loop, popularized by best-selling author James Clear. It highlights all our common behaviors go through the trigger, craving, action, and reward sequence. The problem with habit loops is that your brain never forgets them. So for the rest of your life, every time you experience a trigger like seeing chocolate, you'll be tempted to eat it. It's a permanent battle. To make things worse, we fight this permanent battle and exert our self-discipline using willpower. Willpower is what enables us to use the logical part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, to make logical decisions and fight the basal ganglia's automatic craving response. This is how we say no, even when we have cravings. The problem is, willpower is a limited resource that drains as we use it. And the amount of willpower we have depends on how stressed we are, how much sleep we've had, and how good our nutrition is. See it as a form of mental energy. As you go throughout your day fighting temptation, your energy gets used up. And if you don't eat enough or get enough sleep, your energy level stays low, leaving you vulnerable to temptation. This is why at the end of the day, you're more likely to skip the gym or binge on junk food despite being able to fight temptation all day. So what you are doing is fighting the permanent temptation to cheat on your diet and skip the gym with a weapon of self-discipline that may not work when you need it. This is why so many of us never get consistent. We're relying on self-discipline when we shouldn't. Instead, to get consistent, we need to do the complete opposite. We need to find ways to remove the things that tempt us whilst reducing our reliance on self-discipline to make things happen. So how do we do this? Probably the biggest challenge in getting into shape is our diet. With so many tasty options, it can be really hard to resist eating the wrong food. And so we tend to think self-disciplined people have a superior ability to resist temptation, but this isn't the case. When I was in university, my parents would always buy snacks, so naturally I had the worst time losing weight. Every time I'd walk into the kitchen, I'd see a packet of chips just staring at me. However, one day I noticed something interesting. I hadn't eaten, thought, or stressed about junk food for weeks. Instead, I was eating clean for every single meal. I then realized it was because I hadn't seen any junk food for a while. That day, however, we ran out of fruits to snack on, so I did something different. I checked a different part of the kitchen, and it turns out my parents had unsuccessfully hidden the snacks from me. But just like that, all of the cravings were back. The first takeaway is that almost all my cravings were sparked by visual triggers. The simple fact that I didn't see junk food anymore meant that I didn't experience the trigger my brain is used to. Therefore, it didn't create those cravings, and I had no desire to eat it. But the second I saw junk food again, those cravings were back. This is the most effective way to get rid of all temptation, and that is to manage your triggers. Simply remove all triggers of bad foods and your cravings disappear. This is literally where 90% of the battle is won when it comes to eating clean. Now, there are other triggers that create desire, like the location you're in, time of day, a feeling you have, or a particular smell. But we can't always change how we feel or where we are, and so this is where the second takeaway comes in. Even when I did get those cravings, I was still eating clean because that was the easiest thing to do. If I wanted junk food, I'd need to spend 20 minutes driving to the shops, whereas I could have just snacked on healthier things in the fridge. This is called managing the difficulty of the task, and it makes sticking to your diet a whole lot easier because, as humans, we do what is convenient. So by getting rid of junk food, it makes you far less likely to eat it, even if you wanted to, and it instead enables you to eat clean. So by managing your environment to reduce your triggers and make it difficult to eat junk food, you cover 3 of the 4 ways of getting rid of a bad habit. These steps give me 90% of my dieting success, and without them I would completely fail. The crazy thing is, despite eating clean for 2 years, I am still the same person. In fact, for this video, I ate a whole bag of chips because I couldn't wait to shoot the video. As the research says in James Clear's book, disciplined people don't have a superior ability to resist temptation. They just put themselves in environments where there is no temptation. This saves their willpower for harder things like training. So if there is one thing you can do right now that is going to be more effective than any diet or trick you are going to try, it is to literally pause this video and throw away all of your junk food. Without this, you'll be constantly battling temptation. All it takes is a few minutes of effort, and within a week or 2, most of your cravings will disappear. Worst case, you can buy it again, but I guarantee when you look in the mirror in a few months, you'll be happy with your decision. Probably the second biggest challenge with getting into shape is working out regularly. It can be a challenge to even go once a week. This creates this misconception that disciplined people have an abnormal tolerance for hard work. And so this next tactic is how I went from barely gymming twice a week to going 6 to 7 times with ease. So most of us have gone through the daunting task of learning how to drive. When you start out, you're all nervous and constantly thinking of what to do. It takes a lot of effort and willpower, but over time, as you keep practicing, it becomes effortless, till sometimes you've driven the same route, you don't even need to think. So what does driving have to do with working out? Well, the science has shown if you repeat something enough times, your basal ganglia programs it as a new habit loop, meaning that these behaviors now become automatic. In other words, it becomes very easy. This means that when you're trying to pick up a new habit like going to the gym, you should approach it like learning how to drive. It may be difficult at first, but start small. If you feel like you can only go to the gym once a week for 30 minutes, that is absolutely fine. Just keep at it, and over time you'll find yourself getting comfortable with that workload. And then you'll be able to add more and more till you're working out 7 days a week easy. And this is the secret of disciplined people. They don't have a higher tolerance for hard work. They've simply repeated the task enough times till it becomes effortless. People ask me how I train 6 times a week, but in reality, I don't even have to think about it, which is pretty good for someone that struggled to go twice a week. So start small and keep at it, and one day you'll be looking at a completely different person. Now, if you want to speed up the process, we can actually use the same tactics we mentioned earlier, managing triggers and the difficulty of the task. We can manage triggers by reminding ourselves to gym more and put visual reminders around us. Whether it's your drink bottle, gym tag, towel, these things will constantly remind you to work out. And if you want to work out more, well then make working out easier. The more effort you put into thinking about working out, the less likely you are to do it. So you can be ready to go with your workout gear on, find the closest gym to your house, or even start working out at home. Or to make it even easier, follow a pre-made program, particularly anything with a science-based approach. Another big challenge when it comes to working out is that it can feel like a chore. But how are we meant to stick with it if we don't enjoy it? And so this next tactic is what made me go from resenting the gym to absolutely falling in love with it. So one day I was researching how we get stronger. I learned that unless we beat our last workout, then we haven't made progress. This got me thinking. I hadn't been tracking my workouts, so I had no idea whether I was making progress. That's when I started a log. I tracked what exercises, weights and reps I did, and every time I stepped in the gym, I aimed to beat my last workout. This is where everything changed. I went from being lazy to pushing every single workout. But what I didn't expect was to actually enjoy it. Every time I managed an extra rep, I felt amazing. I knew I was making progress. Workouts went from being this aimless chore to something I look forward to. So by tracking progress and letting yourself know you've improved, you tap into the reward part of the habit loop. This works because as humans, we feel positive when we achieve something. What ends up happening is a self-perpetuating cycle, where you work out to get the feeling of reward, and that reward spurs you on to do it again. And as we saw before, the more you do something, the more it becomes automatic and easy. If you need further proof, research has shown that fitness tracking for everyday people led to higher levels of motivation, and as a result, physical activity. So self-disciplined people do not have an abnormal love for hard work. They simply like making progress. So if you want to track your activity, a really easy way is to use your phone. For me, I use the Notes app. I just record what exercises I do, what weight, and how many reps. It only takes a few minutes and you'll be falling in love with the process. Remember, if someone like me can go from barely gymming and a bad diet to training 7 times a week and eating clean every day, then you can too. You just need to overcome the common misconceptions about self-discipline. Till then, you only live this life once. Make the most of it.